Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl, Lucifer, as well as Gotham. Like always, if I end up talking about something that you really don't care about, you can always look in the description down below and see the time slots of when I started talking about each of the shows that I'm talking about today, so that way you can kind of go ahead and skip ahead to what you want to listen to. But first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Supergirl. So, a very interesting episode on multiple levels. For one, just right off the bat, talk about the fact is we get Jimmy suiting up as Guardian. Once I already had it spoiled for me. Obviously, this is kind of like the prototype outfit. I've kind of seen pictures of what the finished product is going to look like. But still, for a first time test run, it was pretty nice. The little shield and everything, the little voice modulator and everything. I really liked it. I even liked the fact that it's made, like the moment like he was there and then Kara was looking at him and everything, I'm like, it's made out of lead, isn't it? And she tries her x-ray vision. It's like, oh, it's made out of lead. He's like, I can't make it that easy for him. I was like, dude, that's so awesome. It's like, of course you do that because you knew Kara would try to figure your identity out. But it's like keeping it a secret and everything. I really like that because it's going to make it very interesting going forward. Because something I've always thought was interesting, like, it's kind of like, it's almost like you look at it as kind of like a Batman and Superman situation where it's like, because more often than not, Batman knows Bruce's identity, most likely because of the whole X-ray thing, or maybe it's just because, Bruce isn't that big on telling his identity. I'm very curious how that works out in most depictions of that, when, whether it's justice like related or just DC in general related. How does he often know Bruce's identity? He knows, granted, based on the fact is I've seen the Flashpoint movie, while even like I'm about to call him Wally, even Barry knows that Bruce is Batman. So I guess it's just kind of like they all share identities type of thing. So I guess if you can't share your identity with anyone, I was wondering because I think it'd be interesting dynamic of just him playing off being like a vigilante and whatnot, but then you also play into the factor that it's like he has to be explaining bruises and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, it's cut. Oh yeah, I tripped or something. That's because it's going to be very interesting balancing that out because like obviously him and Wynn, who are it's cool to see them teaming up. It's like, yeah, we're kind of doing this hero thing. He's kind of like support, kind of getting everything kind of locked, set up for him and everything. Tell him to do this and do that. It seems like he's got some like. First now he has the shield and everything, and then he also has that whatever it was. It looked like kind of like a little almost miniature bomb. He sent it there, and it stuck onto the monster, and it exploded. So I don't know whether that was something that maybe. What I'm curious about is with the suit, is it something Wynn can kind of operate like? It's like, oh, you need a shield, and he types up and he types it and summons it for Jimmy, or is it something that Jimmy has to do himself, can do himself or stuff? Like, I'm just very curious. Like I said, this was like a test run. It's going to be interesting to see this in the future when the fact is that they are keeping this from Kara because they know if they tell Kara, it's like she's going to try her best to tell them not to do it. Which is very interesting considering the whole episode, the whole time she's trying to get Mon-El to become a hero and her friend. It's because one thing, Mon-El has powers they don't, so she's very overprotective of the people that she loves and cares for, so it makes sense in that regard. But, they kind of see that dynamic go on between them and just like, oh yeah, oh, like she's like, oh, you gotta rush off to save the day. Yeah, I gotta rush off and, yeah, I got some meeting thing going on. It's going to be interesting because we always see Kara balancing her life with being a superhero and working at Catco. Now being a reporter and everything. It's going to be interesting to see how Jimmy balances it because he has Cat's job now. So it's kind of like being the big boss of the business at the same time being a vigilante. It's just like, because Wynn did bring up the fact is there are sacrifices that have to be made. Those haven't come up yet, but I'm sure that's going to be the case. I guess the sacrifices is eventually, maybe at some point, he'll have to leave his identity as Jimmy Olsen behind and just fully be dedicated to being the Guardian. But so far, we don't know. Maybe that'll eventually be where it goes down the road. Maybe not. I guess we'll just kind of really have to wait and see in that regard. But I'll be very interested to see them kind of teaming up in the near future. And like and kind of going back to the whole Mon-El thing, I feel a little bad for him. Granted, him doing what he's doing is basically, it's like Kara found out, is like basically he acting as muscle for guys. It's like, oh yeah, he beats up people so they pay off their gambling debts. It's like, really? You're doing that? You're using your powers for that? He's like, But, it's like, is it really that wrong for me to use my powers? She's like, yes, you're supposed to be a hero and everything. He's like, I never said I wanted to be a hero. You kind of pushed that on me, mainly because Kara believes, he has the potential to become a hero and everything. Because, like, we don't really know that much about Mon-El from when he was on Daxam. Like, we know that he was a royal guard and everything. So, to me, it's just kind of like he's got his own way of doing things. Plus, it's one of that situation, it's that situation again, we kind of have Kara, like, pushing her way of doing things onto him, like the whole job situation. Like, it's like, oh, things worked out for her with Catco and everything, and controlling her abilities and stuff like that, kind of understanding Earth customs. I brought it up before. It's like the fact that she had a couple years, plus she had her family to back her up to kind of work everything out, but she only gives like Mon-El a couple of days, to kind of really like one day to kind of figure it almost all out. So but it's kind of like that again, but it's because it's almost like she's pushing her values onto him and everything. And it's just kind of like, Alex kind of brought it up last episode. You gotta let people live their life and kind of figure themselves out. Which, I mean, yes, he should be using his powers for, doing exactly what he's doing, because that's not the best way to use his powers. But I don't think it's, like, to me, I'm me. Like, if I had superpowers, I'd be taking every advantage of it I can. But I guess because, if you want to break it down, I'm pretty sure Barry uses his powers, like, doing his job. So technically, Barry profits from using his powers, but really it's for the greater good and everything. It's to speed up his job and everything, make sure he gets to crime scenes in time and collect. There's a gray area in there. That's all I can say. Granted, doing what he's doing is kind of very black and white, but the very nature of like, hey, I'm using my powers to make a profit. It's like, I have them. Why don't I use them to kind of, But I get it also because it's the whole secret identity thing too. It's kind of like if you're going around or using your powers as Mon-El, it's like obviously people are going to track you down and turn into a whole big thing. But also because it's like, Kara feels responsible for him. She's the one that's kind of teaching him about Earth, teaching him to kind of be responsible and everything. So anytime any failures he has kind of goes back on her. She feels responsible for him. It's like, she's like almost like a big, like, I almost want to say a parent or a big sister in the sense of being like, hey, I'm teaching you how things work. Which, I don't know, because that's kind of the thing. Will there be something between her and Mon-El or not? Like I've said in the past, I know he's Valor and everything, but I want him to be Superboy so he could be with Magan. I want that to be a thing because they haven't had any interaction yet. If we can get them in the same scene to have some interaction, be like, oh, hey, I'm Mon-El. Oh, I'm Magan. I would lose my mind. Also, the fact of the matter is we had Jimmy and Wayne. I just had to throw it in there because it came to my mind. I'm glad I didn't forget about it. It's like, yeah, Super Friends. I literally lost my mind. I was like, Super Friends. I'm such a dork. I know, but it just, because I kind of grew up on the Super Friends cartoons, much like when I was like super young, because I remember watching them from time to time and stuff like that. So I guess it got hit with a little bit of nostalgia and whatnot. So, but dude, I want that so badly, especially because, side note to anyone that didn't know, I just saw a thumbnail and a title, but apparently Young Justice has been brought back for a third season. That's, like I said, I only read a title. I haven't really read too much into it. So if you are curious, which I am curious, I know Young Justice season 1 and 2 are on Netflix, so I need to go back because it's been a while since I've seen them. So, that'd be pretty cool. But like I said, that's awesome, yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that I still kind of want my Young Justice to exist on Supergirl too. And the fact of the matter is the crossovers are happening like 2 weeks from now, like the four-part crossover with all the shows. So technically, I could get a little bit of my Young Justice there, my own like little bit of a Justice League action going on. Oh, super excited for that, dude. Nevertheless, I really need to calm down. But like I said, at the end of it, it's kind of like I understand where Kara is coming from. And I understand where Alice is coming from. I still think that's a little judgmental, being like, oh, you're sitting here getting drunk and everything. It's like, okay, oh, you're just a coward, aren't you? He's like, I don't know how to be a hero. It's just like, how about you just stand up and fight like the rest of us? I was like, that's a bit harsh. But like, I get it. It's like, sitting there wallowing in his own self-pity isn't going to do anything, because he got super upset because it's like he sees Kara hurting and everything. And it's like, it's like he sees, that she is disappointed and everything. Because it's like, Alex is like, I don't believe in you. But the fact of the matter is Kara does. And it's like, you're letting her down essentially. So like I said, it's give and take, because I just like, part of me is like, you're being a little harsh, but at the same time it's like, but only because, you know, like in Kara's case, she sees the potential that he can be a hero, he can use his powers to help people, which he did a little bit in this episode, because you also have to count the fact is that he isn't nearly as powerful as Kara is, which we saw that in a little training session. It seemed like she was just purely showing off. That point she ran up the wall and flipped over him, like, you're just showing off at that point. And then at one point he's charging towards her and she just flies away. I was like, that's cheap. He can't fly. I mean, granted, he can jump really far. It's going to be interesting just to see where he takes all this. Like, to see him, you know, we saw him step up to his hero game a little bit this episode. It's going to be nice to kind of see it stepped up a little further. I mean, the monster in this episode, the alien, I really like that whole parasite thing. It made my skin crawl when I saw it come out of his mouth and go in his ear. I was just like, ugh. That's just because I've been in a situation where I have bugs near my ears, and that just makes me think of that, and it just makes my skin crawl. But, I like the fact in the matter it was a monster that constantly absorbed energy from people and stuff like that, and just every time it touched like Kara, it would just get super strong, and then it touched Kara and Martian Manhunter, it started draining their powers, and it changed into that thing. I mean, it was like, oh, maybe it was from absorbing the DNA of alien, you know, two aliens at the same time. Might just be from the fact is that it ended up absorbing from John, because, you know, him being a Martian, he can shapeshift and everything, so maybe that part of his DNA kind of warped into the monster and made it. I mean, it's kind of sad, because the dude that became the monster, Dr. Jones, was a scientist trying to help climate change, and he basically ended up inadvertently killing all his colleagues. The fact of the matter is, this thing had been buried underneath ice for, what they say, like 5,000 years. As an alien species that came here in my crash land, so meaning we might be able to see more of it in the future. I mean, who knows? It might not be the only one of its kind. I mean, I'm definitely not out here in the universe, but here on Earth, maybe. So it'd be kind of interesting to see where, that go. It's kind of sad, because Kara's like, please let me help you. But she was like, I guess there's no choice. And basically, she used plutonium to have it absorb all the energy, and then it exploded. So poor guy. There was no saving him. I guess with the circumstances, like, you had to put him down. But still, it sucked. And another note in this episode is the whole Alex thing, like, legitimately broke my heart, because you see her struggling and everything. You know, Maggie's like, okay, if you want to kind of figure this out, like, you know, tell your family, because she's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a phase. She's like, it's not a phase, like, you know, this is kind of, you know, this is how it is, like, you know, you should tell your family. She's like, I told my family. Dad's wasn't the most accepting at first, but, you know, he's pretty cool about it and everything. So she tells Kara, and Kara's trying to understand it and everything. But then Alex kind of gets frustrated, because, you know, she doesn't really understand it herself, how she feels and everything. So it's a little harder to kind of talk about it. I guess it makes it weird for her. She even brought up examples of, like, there was like a best friend she had in high school that basically slept in her bed, slept over at her house and everything, and she felt something then, but all she could really remember is the fact is that her and that best friend had a huge falling out over something stupid, and maybe it's just because it was her inadvertently reacting to that. And now that this has come up and everything, it's making her look back on a lot of stuff in life and be like, stuff that she kind of buried, and it's like, oh, it kind of puts things in perspective for her, being like, maybe it's always been there, that there have been moments in my life where I felt something, but I've just kind of denied it because I didn't want to admit it and everything. And there was a moment that, you know, I was kind of scared. It's like, oh, is Kara not accepting of it? It's not that it's a lot to kind of handle, because it's like Alex kind of sprung it on her, and it's just, you know, for some people it's kind of like, oh, like, I didn't know that about you and everything. I was like, oh, you know, I mean, and I think that's why it hit Kara so hard. I mean, she even talks about it. So the fact is that growing up, any conversations her and Alex had, they were always about her. So she's like, I never gave you an environment to talk, to open up about these types of things. So I'm apologizing. I'm sorry for it. Alex is like, no, you don't have anything to be sorry about. It's like, you know, it's just like, because at the end of the day, it's like, of course Kara's going to accept it. You're her sister. She's going to love you nevertheless, you know? And so, you know, even had Kara kind of giving her pep talk, being like, go, I got a monster to go get. You get your girl. And it's just like, you see, I mean, that's what's also heartbreaking about it too, is because, like, heartbreaking yet beautiful at the same time. You've never seen Alex like this. Like, Alex is always the tough girl, because she's always been there. She's been a big sister, taking her for a little sister, you know, kind of sacrificing like a lot of her life for it, for that particular purpose and everything. So she's never really been vulnerable. This episode is our first time ever seeing her like really vulnerable and open about her feelings, because a lot of that stuff for her, it always took a back seat to Kara and everything else in her life. So it's just like her priorities is protecting Kara's secret and everything kind of took precedence over everything else. But this is the first time we get to really see Alex kind of open up and everything. So that was kind of cool. But the heartbreaking part is like she musters up the courage, she kisses Maggie, and then Maggie proceeds to friend zone her. I was like, oh my, she got friend zoned so hard, and it's like, oh, she went for it and got denied, and then she's like, oh yeah, like I want to be there for you as a friend, and she was like, no, stay for Tracy. She's like, no, I can't. You see her crying. It broke my heart seeing her crying, and then she's holding her and Kara's there to hold her and everything. It sucks, dude. Because she really, really liked Maggie. Because she's kind of like, I wish I'd never opened up about, being gay. And just like, the fact is, I wish I'd never talked about this. Because that conversation made her more accepting of it and made her make a move on Maggie, I mean, it sucks anytime. Like, anytime you get denied by someone, I talk from experience. It sucks hard, especially when you really like someone. You can obviously tell Alex really is into Maggie. Like, she's never felt like this towards anybody else. And so it sucks. I mean, there's one side of it you can look at as being like, well, the fact of the matter is Maggie is pretty fresh off a breakup. So obviously she's not looking to get back into a relationship. I mean, there's no telling how long her and her girlfriend were together. And it's just like, you're just kind of getting out of a relationship of a broken heart. So you're not quickly to go back in another situation, putting your heart on your sleeve and everything. So you kind of understand where Maggie's come from. And the other side, you're like, but what about Alex's heart? What about her? She struggled so hard to come to terms with everything. Accepting herself is like, okay, this is who I am. And it's like, she makes the first move and it's like, she gets friend zoned for it. I don't think that's going to be the end of the story. I mean, it's sure as hell going to make working with Maggie in the future super awkward. But at the very least, what this means, like, I get the feeling like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think given enough time, Maggie will be like, yo, I'm good. I can date now. It's like, would you like to? And it's like, yo. I mean, because she really wanted Alex to kind of take the opportunity to be like, hey, kind of go out there, sample the pool out there. Kind of, you're just you're just getting to this stage in your life. So it's kind of like, hey, go out there, kind of enjoy yourself a little bit before you kind of decide all on me type of thing. So I think that's, maybe that's Maggie's way of being like, hey, like, before you kind of jump to be like all with me and everything, maybe you should take some time apart and be like, yo, figure ourselves out. Let you figure you out first and let me recover from my recent breakup and everything. Because I don't think it's that Maggie doesn't like her. I think Maggie does like her, but maybe it's just in a friend way, or maybe it's because she, like I said, doesn't want to kind of enter something like this, ruin something that, because she does like Alex and she doesn't want to ruin it. I mean, it could be either way. I guess really we'll find out more as things progress. And then there was the whole McGon situation where it's like, oh yeah, because of John being hurt by the monster and everything, it's sucking his life away and everything, which is like, I kind of skipped over that, but that's a pretty brutal way to kill someone, just like literally sucking the life and energy out of a person. But McGon having to transfer her own blood. Now, from like, because you see her kind of freaking out about it. She's like, I don't know, I can't. And then Alex is like, no, you're the only Martian here, green Martian, and being like, you have to save him. If you don't, he'll die, which, McGon does it for multiple reasons. One, because I think that she legitimately cares about John. Two, it's also because she's afraid, because it's like she and her people wiped his people out. So it's like the very least she can do is save his life. But then she was like, she even says, forgive me, because she knows like if he ever finds out that he has the blood of a white Martian, his mortal enemy inside of him, and John will just snap. And that's because part of me was halfway there was a part of me wondering, like, is she about to show him her true form and everything? Like, dude, I'm saying that's literally making me think of Young Justice more and more. Like, that fact is, what if Mon-El out of everyone ended up being the one to find out about her true form? Maybe they'll twist it up and make it so that it's actually Kara who knows the secret first, and she has to keep it from John. There's maybe one or two people, maybe even Alex finds out. That'd be kind of interesting, and it'd be like they have to keep that secret because they're like, because she's going to be like, I'm trying to build up the courage. I feel like it's probably going to be something specific that forces her to kind of like reveal herself as a white Martian. But nevertheless, John's not. Fact of the matter is, McGon's like, I gotta leave, and then John's like, no, stay. But then she looks and sees the other side of his hand shaking. So is that kind of ramifications? Because I'm sure they probably have similar bodies, white Martians and green Martians. Probably, and like biologically speaking, maybe on a anatomy level, they might have similar bodies, but at the same time, they're obviously very different. I mean, not just in appearance and body size, but probably their insides are very different too. So maybe there's going to be an adverse reaction from her giving him some of her blood because his hand was shaking everything. So maybe that's what that was. I don't know, because it seems like that might be what she's also. I mean, it seems like you can see the fear in her eyes, wondering if that's going to be the case or not. I mean, any ramifications we'll kind of have to wait till possibly next episode to see. And then the final note. Sorry. We have Mon-El being taken by Cadmus. So what does that mean? We're going to see Mon-El as a villain now? Is Cadmus going to transform him into one? Because it's back to that situation of being like, oh yeah, aliens are the enemies and everything. That's what I was thinking of. Like, I was thinking of something earlier with Guardian, but I couldn't remember what my point was, so I kind of trailed away from it. But the fact of the matter is, Guardian represents a new ray of hope for people too, because it's like we're not as reliant on aliens to save us, because a lot of the people are very against aliens at this point, especially the last episode with the whole alien weaponry around. But with Guardian on the scene, it's like, oh, we're being protected by a human. Yeah, humans. Yay, humans. Aliens, boo, type of situation. So to me, that's going to change things up too, because it's like, hey, Supergirl, nah, bring Guardian here to hell. I mean, I doubt it's going to be like that because everyone loves Supergirl. But the fact of the matter is, as you know, like with any situation, love can quickly turn to hate. It's like, the masses can easily turn against you in a second, over anything. So, but the fact of the matter is, Mon-El has been taken by Cadmus. So I'm very interested to see what they end up doing with him, whether they make him. Because that's the thing, like his codename is Valor. Now, I was wondering if that was something Gwen did to him, but maybe it's something Cadmus does. Maybe Cadmus enhances his abilities and does more to him, because it's like, because from the knowledge we have, like Daxamites don't have the same weakness Kryptonians, and Kryptonians are weak to kryptonite, and it doesn't seem like Daxamites have that out. I mean, granted, like I said, he's not as strong as Kara, so enough damage will eventually, you get someone strong enough, kind of beating on him long enough, it's not a problem. But maybe that's how he becomes Valor. It's because of Cadmus instead of Kara, and it ends up leading them to being adversaries against each other. Once again, I'm sorry I'm doing it every time, but Young Justice, that was kind of like Superboy. Superboy started off as an experiment by the alien species to be like, oh yeah, they tried cloning Superman, and they ended up making him like, he's not as strong as Superman, but still, like, what if they end up doing that? But rather than being like, oh, like maybe Kara is able to bring him back over to the, the light side, or maybe their experiment completely fails and he doesn't become the bad guy, but they supercharge him and he gets super strong and he kind of is more on par with Kara. So, I mean, either way, it'd be so interesting, and there's so many different directions it can go, and I'm super excited to see what they do. So, and now moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer, which I will go as far as say, I think I've said this earlier about something this week, this season, but man, really, really love this episode of Lucifer. It was so good. The fact of the matter is, we have that was like a brutal ass opening with that lady running. She got knocked off her bike. The person's chasing after her. She's running for her life in broad daylight. People are trying to stop Doobie. He pushes them aside and he stabs her repeatedly. And then when they get to the crime scene and everything, Lucifer looks at the picture that caught the killer, and it's like, oh, he's using Azrael's blade, which I love the conversation of being like, yeah, my sister. I was like, oh, Azrael, okay, that's interesting. It makes you wonder, will we get to meet Azrael? Because, I mean, do you have her bladed and everything? But it's like someone went and dug up Uriel's grave and pulled the blade out, and Lucifer gets Amenadal and Maze on his side. He's like, you do, like, Maze is like, I got to get back to work, bounty hunting and everything. But he's like, you do realize this involves you too, right? Because say that Chloe ends up picking up this blade and you just happen to piss her off, she could end up killing you, because this thing does kill celestial beings as well. Lucifer going as far as saying, like, yeah, I'm gonna handle this because as you know, I clean up my messes. And even Maze kind of laughs at that. It's because it's like, yeah, you clean up your messes. But what I really loved in this episode is the fact is that he's kind of doing his own investigation too, like the main investigation. He's getting Ella to kind of help him and everything. And then Ella's like, okay, like, he's like, I give you something, you help me out. And she's like, okay, she whispers something. And he's like, nope, that's not gonna happen. She said, come on, you had a deal. and he accepts, which we end up finding out later on what that deal was, and that was basically for him to go to church with her and everything like that. So that was kind of interesting. But I really love the conversation when they get to the whole. She's like, "Wait, is this a grave? Did you bring me out here to kill me?" And then he like pretends like he's about to. He's like, I'm just messing with you and everything. He's just like, okay. It's like there's all this evidence around this creepy, not grave that you brought me to and everything. So, and what I love even more about the whole situation is the fact is that the entire episode you have a jealous Chloe, because Chloe's seeing Ella and Lucifer spending time together and everything. She's like, oh yeah, and, oh, haven't you noticed that Ella and Lucifer been spending a lot of time? She says that to Dan, and Dan's like, what? I don't know. Are they working on something together? He's like, no, I don't think. He's like, you're jealous. She's like, no, I'm not. And then she's like, you can always talk to me. I am, I'm there for you when it comes to you talking about another man. She's like, for Chloe, it's like, no, that's my partner. She didn't want her partnering up with someone else. It's like, because even Dan throws maybe it's more than sex. Maybe it's like a little more intimate. The fact is that he opens up to her, and I'm sure that hit Chloe even harder because it's like, because Lucifer doesn't open up to her about anything, so it's just kind of like she's losing her partner and he's getting all chatty with someone else. It was just, I love her reaction the entire episode. And he says something that it's like, oh yeah, you said this, and then she's like, I've never said that. He's like, oh right, Miss Lopez probably said it. He's like, oh yeah, so you and Ella have been spending a lot of time together. And he's just kind of like, really, what are you talking about? He did clear things up by the end of the episode, being like, me and Ella. It's like, no, but me and Ella haven't done anything. He's like, now, if you want, we want to be in that situation yourself. You ever feel tempted to, like, you want to be friends with that? She's just like, no, just forget it. I even love the fact is that during that murder scene where the knife kept switching between people and they kept killing each other, and basically Ella and Lucifer are reenacting it and everything, and there was a moment she was on her knees doing the knife motion and his hand was on her. I was like, dude, I love it. That the erotic the innuendo that was created from that erotic reenactment and everything. And Chloe's just like, okay. I loved it. Even catching them in a quote unquote loving embrace when she walked in on him and everything. So, but that was a really interesting thing about Azrael's blade, because that never really came up. I'm glad this episode kind of gave you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the blade too, because not only does it belong to obviously Azrael, the angel of death, which I did have to look that up because I was like, they brought that up, but I was just kind of like, I was just curious, like, obviously this shows you on pull from religion and everything, so they're going to get accurate about certain things. But what I like is the fact is that the blade awakens the anger within you. So like, if say someone steps on your shoe, you have the blade in your hand, it will amplify that hate. It's even like, even if someone apologized, the fact is that little spark of just like annoyance will magnify 1,000-fold into pure bloodlust anger to the point you have to kill them. So and that was just incredible to me, that that murder scene turned into that, where it's just like the knife passes from one person to the other, and literally 6 people, technically, 6 people were dead like that. That was just, it blew my mind. I even love the conversation between Amenadel and Maze, where they're searching files and everything, and then she's like, you know what, this whole mama's boy thing isn't very attractive. He's like, oh yeah, this whole like skin tight clothes, bad girl attitude thing is like, it doesn't it doesn't work. And she's like, yeah, it does. And just it's so sad, because Amenadel started off so strong, and then he just fell apart because it crumbled. Granted, it's Maze in front of him, it's just kind of like she still has whether he's willing to admit it or not, he hasn't brought it up for a while, but there is still that part of him, because at the beginning of the season he was like, oh yeah, Maze, like, yeah, oh, you need space and everything, right? Well, yeah. You with other people, yeah, me too. When he was hiding, the fact is what was happening to the fact is he lost his angel powers and whatnot. So it's been a while since it's referenced the fact is that, like, oh yeah, there is something between them and everything. So, but I did like what Lucifer did for I think the woman's name was Corrine. Basically, the dude Duncan ended up showing up there, and basically the knife came whispering to her, and she ended up killing him. Essentially, it was because Duncan had assaulted her like many years ago, and then the knife called out to her, and she just ended up killing him for it and everything. And when the others show up and everything, Lucifer kind of does the kind thing where he's like, hey, no, don't worry about it. Like, she didn't kill him. Like, I mean, she killed him out of self-defense. And even Kareem was kind of like, the fact is that Lucifer stood up for her and everything and just kind of changed the narrative. What I really appreciate is the fact is right afterwards, Dan picks up the knife and he's like, you ruined my marriage. He's like, really? I ruined your marriage? He's like, everything was fine until you popped up. And then Lucifer reminded him, is like, dude, your marriage was already on the rocks before I showed up. You were already kind of a dirty cop, very kind of skating on the line between right and wrong well before I showed up and everything. And then you see Dan kind of fighting a little bit, and Lucifer's impressed. He's like, you actually have very strong will. I didn't really even realize that. And gets the knife away from him. And then Dan's like, oh, what happened? Yo, we had that good talk. He's like, how do you feel? He's like, actually, I feel good. He's like, good talk, right? He's like, good talk. And the icing on the cake about the whole situation is the reason why, because it begged up the question, like, the only person who would have found that is someone who knew it was buried there. Only 3 people knew that Uriel was buried there. Lucifer, their mom, and Amenadal. And the way Amenadal was acting at the beginning, it made me think, oh, did he get the knife out? But it's like the one that got the knife out was technically their mom. I mean, really, she made a roadmap and basically gave it to multiple people, like 10 people or something, to find it. And Lucifer's like, what? Are you out of your damn mind? She's like, if you didn't want anyone to find it, you should have hid it somewhere else. And he's like, you mean in the place I hid it, which is in a forest, in a grave that no one goes near or around and would have never found it if you hadn't pointed people in the right direction? It's like, okay, you have a point. All this started because she was trying to get God's attention. Because she's like, if he found out that his toys, and that's the thing though, his toys, because to her, like, she's shown on multiple occasions, she cares very little for humans, that because, as like I said, referring to them as toys and everything, God's toys, that she was just trying to get his attention. And then Lucifer's like, okay, you didn't get it. He's like, you really expect to get Dad's attention? You really expect him to pay you any attention? It's like, okay, going on being deluded like that, Mom. But the fact of the matter is, you have humans killing each other, and you have her being so shocked. She's like, why do you care so much for these humans? She's like, I can't understand why these humans mean so much to you. And that's the thing, Lucifer himself doesn't understand. It's like, why do humans mean so much to him? It's because I think, his time here on Earth has changed him in a very interesting way. Because from the very beginning, he's always found humans fascinating, but the more time he spends around, the more fascinated and enthralled with them he is. And I think a big part of that is Chloe. She plays a big role, but I think in general, I don't think it's just about Chloe neither. I think in general, he does care about the well-being of humans, because if that was the case, he wouldn't have done what he did for Kareem, like making it so it's like, oh, she killed that dude Duncan out of self-defense. It's like, no. So it's not just tied to Chloe. Chloe played a part in kind of helping him evolve into the person he is. That it's not just about dishing out punishment anymore, which he doesn't even label it. It's like, oh yeah, let's get punished. It's like, no, for him, it's like getting justice for people. It's like, oh yeah, now this is true justice and everything. So you see that it's a very interesting perspective, because he's even different from the Lucifer from the first season, because we saw Lucifer like slowly but surely progressing towards this route, and now you see him as this person. And even then, like I said, he's still a very different person from the first season, let alone like he's been in LA for like 5 years maybe. So even then, it's no telling like how different he was when he first came to Earth and everything. So but then at the very end, he's talking to his mom and everything, and it's like he finally hears his mom's true motives and everything. He's like, it's like, what do you want, Mom? You're not talking to Dad, wanting to talk to Dad just for goodness sake. You want something from him. What is? And she's like, to be back home. It's not about, she uses it as a precursor, being like, oh, let's grieve together. The fact is we could grieve about Uriel. He's like, I'm not buying it. It's total BS. You want something. What is? And she wants to go back home. Essentially, like I said before, she wants to get back what was hers before. That's what it's all about. And to her, she's like, we can reclaim heaven. And Lucifer's like, I don't care about any of that. He's like, hell? Because she's like, we could go back home. He's like, what? Home? Hell was never my home. Heaven sure as heck was never my home. It was more like hell for me. She's like, oh, so what is it here? He's like, yes, this is my home, mother. Like, being around humans, because Amenadal is kind of like, do you not see what the dangers of like a celestial weapon like Azrael's blade being here and the damage it caused? Like, us being here is wrong, brother. We should go back home. And he's kind of been sipping on the Kool-Aid that his mom has made. He's kind of been swept into it. But Lucifer isn't buying his mom's spiel anymore. nor is, Maze from the very beginning didn't trust him and everything. So it's going to be interesting now that Dr. Martin knows the truth to see, like, if she points out to Lucifer, yeah, your mom's just manipulating you, because she'll kind of realize, what if we could get all of them in I want to see them all in a therapy session. That'd be kind of sick. But I'll get to Linda in a little bit. Linda, listen, Linda. Okay, I'm sorry. Nevertheless, but the fact of the matter is, he's just like, no, this is my home. You can do whatever the hell you want to, but I'm staying here. I'm not leaving, because, like I said, once again, just like he likes it there. Like everyone, like whether he'll admit it or not, he's come accustomed to all the people that he's around. Dr. Martin, Ella, even Dan, because he even brought in this episode, you and me, we're kind of friends. Oh, chum pal. Like, yeah, we're kind of pals now, which they are. And Chloe, they make up a very crucial part of his life here on Earth, his experience on Earth. And I don't think he's ready to let them or it go. They're kind of, because he actually because the conversation came up before, because like she's, his mom asked, like, why are you helping out the cops? And he's like, because I like doing what I'm doing. He legitimately does, and he's good at it. He's good at helping Chloe out, being her partner and everything. So, but the fact of the matter is, you see him grabbing onto Azrael's blade, and it flames up a little bit, and then his mom looks at it as a sign of something, like it being an opportunity. For what? I don't know. Does this mean, it makes you wonder, does this mean that Lucifer won't? Because my understanding would be the fact is he would destroy the blade, but I guess maybe he can't. Maybe you can't destroy divine weapons like that. I don't know. The fact of the matter is, where is Azrael to the point, like, she doesn't have her blade anymore? Like, is she in heaven or is she somewhere on Earth? The thing is, how did Uriel get it? Not unless he stole it from her. I mean, because I brought it up before, like, it'd be kind of cool to get to see his other siblings. I mean, we've been introduced to one so far. I mean, that one's dead. But obviously you'd think Azrael will pop up and like, yo, Lucifer, bro, where's my blade at? It's like, oh yeah, I got it. Like, now you should be skedaddled. I want to get more interaction between, see the family kind of expand a little bit, because I think maybe I'm completely wrong here. I just assumed Azrael was going to be a guy, because even Linda was like, Azrael's a chick, which finally I will get to her and everything. I love it. I was waiting for it. The therapy session, back in session and everything. Lucifer's talking about the whole Chloe making him a sandwich and everything. And does that mean anything? Is it an intimate representation of trust or not trust? And Dr. Linda's just sitting over, just like, and she's not even sitting in the chair in front of him like normal. She's actually sitting on her desk, just like, Okay, what about Hitler? What kind of way did you torture Hitler? And do you have a special place in hell for bad people like Hitler? Do they kind of have their own section? Which is a good question. I wish we could have gotten an answer to that, being like, is that how that works or not? Then she's asking all these other questions, like, I have my uncle. Is he in hell? Because he was kind of a mean somebody. So just asking all these questions. And then later on in the episode, it kind of turns into reverse and everything. And then she's on the couch, and then Lucifer's there kind of being the therapist and everything. He's like, okay, so that's going to be the end of our session. It's just like, and so, eventually, Linda's kind of like, you know what? I'm sorry. You got to admit, it's a lot to take in. The fact of the matter is, I finally realized you are the devil. It's a little hard, because it was easier when I thought this whole thing was a metaphor that you just kind of used to kind of let you handle things. But now I know that you're the devil. She's like, yeah, the one that you slept with. She's like, right. I've slept with the devil. And he's like, multiple times, in fact. And it's just like, I love it. Because I love the fact is that has to sink in as her new reality. It's so good. I'm telling you, like, overall, just a fantastic episode. I loved it. I'm very interested to see what kind of schemes his mom has up her sleeve and everything. I really love the fact of the matter is she's kind of becoming very accustomed to this whole human thing, because apparently she read every law book there is in like a week or whatever. I guess on some level her powers still I guess angels and celestial beings kind of memorize stuff at a very faster rate. A side note thing is, because I've kind of brought this up, I don't remember if I've ever brought this up in particular, but it would be kind of cool. Like, I think I brought it up because it would never happen. It'd be cool if we kind of got Sandman crossover, from the other Vertigo comic book series, because that's what this is very loosely based on. Because, like, there are other celestial beings besides angels and demons, which we've never really seen other demons besides Maze. Maybe that could be where this kind of escalates to, or maybe that'd be something we could possibly see in a season 3. Is just more otherworldly things coming to this world. But the reason why I say I don't think that would ever happen is because I know Joseph Gordon-Levitt is trying to push to have Sandman turn into a movie. So if that's happening, I doubt they make the character appear on TV. Plus, it's like this is very loosely based on that. I mean, because we're not even crossing the different dimensions and stuff like that, because he's staying purely located in LA and on Earth and everything. So there's no crossing dimensions. So there's no chance of bumping across him. But it'd be kind of cool. Like, at the very least, because I'm not familiar with the comic books or anything like that. I just know from a little bit I've read, scouring the internet in the past and stuff, because I've come across the Sandman stuff like every once in a while and whatnot. So that's, it'd be cool. I mean, even if there were like Sandman references and stuff, because it started off in Sandman before Lucifer kind of got his own spin-off, which I know for the comic books there are like older versions, and then there's like more recent rebooted versions from like, was it 2015? Like, they're more recent, like maybe 2015. Someone recently kind of did their own stuff of Lucifer. So I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the comics to know it's like, oh, this is referencing this, this, and this, and like, oh, this storyline is kind of based around that, and that. So just like I said, overall, a very good episode. I'm just very interested to see where we go next time. And finally, moving on to this week's episode of Gotham, you have Jim doing his best to put this whole situation together, being like, okay, he's suspicious of Barnes. He brings Harvey in, and Harvey's like, there's no way it's Barnes. Barnes is kind of like, the by the book dude. There's no way he's going to be the one behind this. Jim is trying to find evidence, but then, like, he gets called into it. Barnes is like, hey, why don't we go handle something? He's like, oh, let me go call Harvey. He's like, oh, why even bother? We'll be there and back before you know it. And it leads to an interesting conversation in the car and everything about Barnes kind of being like, hey, like, he even brings up the fact that, hey, you didn't actually get my statement and whatnot. He's like, oh, were you in the bathroom? He's like, yeah, I was in the bathroom. Not at the same time as the guy that died and everything. He's just like, oh, so am I off the suspect? Am I off the suspect list? He's like, for now. Ooh, getting all super nervous and everything. And I loved it. And it leads to the conversation of like doing what's right. Even if it, looking at things as simply black and white, no longer a shade of gray. He's like, there's good and there's evil, and we are here to wipe out evil. Because he said it before, it's like he believes that Jim will be the one to kind of help him do it. And an interesting thing that should be noted is the fact is Barnes, throughout the entire episode, anytime he was affected by Alice's blood and it kind of kicked in, his eyes would turn red, and obviously the veins around his eyes would pop. But in this entire episode, that never happened because Alice's blood is kind of completely taken over him. So he's kind of in a calm state. So it's no longer Barnes acting. It's simply the blood taking over him. You could argue like Alice has control of him. And so it leads to the conversation of, doing whatever it takes to get rid of the evil. And Jim being like, no, I don't think like that anymore. He's like, I used to be like that. And I came back to the GCPD because I wanted to do things right this time. It's like, oh, like right when you killed Gallivan. And that was the thing. Jim legitimately says like, he wishes he could go back and change that. He at the time felt like he didn't have any choice, but he's like, I had a choice. If I didn't have to kill Gallivan, but I did. I was filled with so much rage and anger, thinking it was the right thing to do. I was clouded. My judgment was clouded. And I killed Gallivan. And because of that, I lost everything. He lost Lee, but for Barnes, he's kind of like, there's sacrifices that need to be made. I didn't say going down this path would be easy. I just said it'd be right. He even went as far as, because he figured out that Jim was trying to, that Jim had figured him out as being the one that killed that surgeon dude. He killed that bad guy Sugar, and then was going to frame Jim for it. Even got the whole GCPD against him, being like, oh yeah, Jim's a bad guy. He killed this suspect, and then he tried to kill me. But Jim was able to call Harvey and everything, and Harvey got Lee on his side too, because it's like Alice's blood, but it's like they didn't really have any evidence of it. But, Harvey was like, the only person that, at this point in time, the only person that Gordon has is us. So we have to trust him. And it's like, put your faith in Jim, which she did. She filed a kind of a fate report saying like, oh yeah, obviously Barnes is infected with the blood. So everyone in the GCPD obviously listened to them, because Harvey was like, there's no way they're going to listen to me. But if he has Lee backing him up, being like, oh, medical evidence proves that Barnes is infected, then yeah. And you see it even more so. I mean, trying to follow the path of doing the right thing, Jim didn't kill Barnes. He had ample opportunity. No one will necessarily blame him for doing it, but he wasn't going to do it because he knows deep down Barnes is a good man and he doesn't deserve to die. That he's not in control, that all of this is sparked from Alice's blood. And so by the end of the episode, we see him kind of locked up in Arkham and everything. It makes you wonder, like, will there ever be a situation where he'd be back to normal? Or is he going to be like a permanent villain? I mean, he is locked up in Arkham Asylum. I wonder, is that where Tetch is too? That's going to be interesting to see. If that is the case, it's going to be, maybe he helps the Mad Hatter kind of escape and they kind of team up and whatnot. Because in his mind, it's all about, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be necessarily the case, because right now he's in the mindset of getting justice. That's kind of the last words he kept saying over and over again. Justice, justice, justice. So there's no way he'd work with someone like Tetch, who's murdered people before. So it's kind of like, no, for him, it's all about justice. What they probably have to worry about is whether or not he'd end up killing other people in Arkham Asylum, because it's like, oh, you're criminals, and he kills them, snaps their neck or something like that. Because he is super strong and everything because of Alice's blood. Which, this whole situation, it kind of brought Jim and Lee back together a little bit, because it's like, oh, you trusted me. And it's like, oh, Lee, thank you. Like, it's one of that situation. It's like, oh, it's sweet, but at the same time, it's like, but that also means things are going to get complicated with Mario. And, I think the last thing you want to do is break the heart of the son of a, former mafia boss, gang boss, so it's kind of a gray area. Like I said, I'm very interested to see what they do with Mario, because last episode we kind of got to see his darker side when he punched Jim when he was so jealous. Once again, his words being, I will do whatever it takes to keep Lee. Like I said, a little obsessive. So, like I said, we've already seen a little bit of that darker side. I'm getting the feeling we're going to see a lot more as the season progresses, because it does seem like things between him and Lee are kind of rekindling to a certain extent. Because I think for Lee, she's kind of seeing Jim, the man she saw before, a little bit at a time, him back at the GCPD doing the right thing and everything. It's like she's seeing a little bit of the man, like, it's already the feelings were already there, even when he was kind of off being kind of a private PI or whatever. Even then, it's still, there was a little bit of something there between both of them, but now it's just kind of like they're back together, working together on a regular basis and everything. So it seems like those flames are quick to rekindle and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes in that regard. Like, I already told you in the last episode how I feel like Mario's going to try and set everything up and make it seem like Jim's actually a bad guy when it's actually Mario being the bad guy or whatever. I kind of went into it a lot more extensively last episode. So, but like I said, just curious to see where everything goes in that regard. We had the return of Ivy. What I really liked in, like, multiple things about Ivy I really appreciate. Now, one is obviously, like, she's not, because from my knowledge, my very limited Batman knowledge, Ivy is a bit of a scientist. Like, that's how this whole situation, her becoming Poison Ivy, happened, was because she obviously, her obsessions with plants and stuff like that was a part of the science. She studied and everything. An experiment went wrong and made her more plant. Well, she's still human, but she'd rather think of herself as more plant than human. So, but the thing is, in this episode, rather than having her powers as a plant lady, she has basically concocted stuff to make her kind of almost like pheromones to kind of charm people into giving her what she wants. And she ends up robbing a dude earlier in the episode and ends up stealing a jewel from her. But what I also appreciate about this episode also is that we never really got to learn a lot about Ivy. We never really got an opportunity to see her personality, because Ivy was always kind of a background character. She popped up every once in a while, had like a little line, couple lines, a scene or so, but it was never like a big moment. Like, you've never gotten a chance to really know Ivy like you've gotten to know Selene. But this episode, you kind of got to see her personality kind of shine through that. Because you have multiple occasions, Selene is like, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Even though you're in an adult's body, you're still an idiot. Because the whole situation of Bruce is like, okay, we need to return it. She's like, no, it's super valuable. And he's like, okay, I'll buy it off you. Whatever amount of money you want for it, I'll pay it. And she's like, okay, I want $1,000. And then Bruce was like, sure. And then Selene was like, I knew it, you're an idiot. And she's like, 2,000. He's like, sure. She's like, 5,000. No, 10,000. How much should I ask for this? And then Selene's like, don't ask me. It was just it's so interesting to find out that she's a bit of an airhead. Now, arguably, maybe that's because she's a little bit younger, even though she can make this whole concoction and everything. I mean, granted, that's probably just from her own experience with messing with plants and everything, knowing that it's like, oh, this plant does this and that. And it's like, oh, people have this certain reaction to it. I'm sure she's, like, in the time we haven't been around her, she's probably like practiced a little bit, kind of seeing what works and what doesn't work. So you could argue there. But I like the fact of the matter is they make her a bit of an idiot. I mean, because granted, she isn't a full-grown adult. She is still a child on the inside, just has the body of an adult. Which I love the fact that Bruce was like, you look nice. And just Selene kind of looked at him like, really? You really? And everything. So I even love the fact that Ivy was like, oh my goodness, you guys are a couple, aren't you? And then they were like, Bruce is like, yes. And then Celine's like, no. And then Bruce looks at her, it's like, wait, we're not a couple? And then she's like, really? No, we're not having this conversation right now. Those dudes are coming after us. As you can see, they already killed this one dude. It does make me wonder, could this all be connected to that organization or not? The one, what was the lady's name? Was her name Catherine? Yeah. That group, the mask group and everything, the ones that's got an interest, they've kept an eye out on Penguin and whatnot. It does make me wonder, like, could they be behind this? Because whatever it is, it's connected to that jewel, which turned out to be a key to something. To what exactly? I don't know. But what I also appreciated was the fact of the matter is that Selene was like, she kept being like, she's like, oh, I'm sorry if I ruined something between you and your boyfriend. It's like, I told you he's not my boyfriend. And then you see those guys looking through their stuff, like, they end up seeing, like, one guy ends up removing a brick from the wall or whatever, and he finds a little box back there, and he opens up the box, and there was a newspaper picture of Bruce, when his parents got murdered. It's like, so you don't like him, huh? So why are you keeping a picture of him in a box behind a brick wall? It's like, because other than that, she actually doesn't have any other picture of Bruce. Like, honestly, there's there's always been something between Bruce and Selene. Like, the whole situation, like, the fact is that she's super reluctant to admit how she feels. It's kind of sweet and adorable, but it's very interesting because it makes you wonder how long there's no telling how long she's kept that. Like, is that a more recent thing where it's just kind of like she wanted a reminder of Bruce? But the fact of the matter is she has it hidden away because she doesn't want no one to know about it. It's almost like her hidden little treasure or something like that. It's so adorable. Like, I always love that when, like, people obviously click together, but they're super reluctant to admit. Obviously, Bruce is kind of like, no, I like you. Like, there's no denying that. But then you have Selene being very, I guess it's also because she's very bashful to admit it in front of other people, let alone Ivy. So now Ivy and Selene will be staying at their house, which we never sadly got Alfred's opinion about this. We'll probably get to see it next episode because we already know that Ivy's going to try and steal something from him, which Selene isn't going to, because it's Selena. I think I just keep calling her Selene. Selena isn't going to, because it's like, for her, it's just kind of like, I don't think she'd be in a position to want to, like, steal from Bruce. Like, that's what this is all making me wonder. It's like, they're already in the state that they are in, because Batman and Catwoman always had that kind of, like, opposites attract type of relationship. So the fact is that Bruce and Selena are already there. What does that mean for them in the future? It's just so many questions as to where that all might go, how it might all play out and everything. It's just a very interesting episode. I'm just so curious about where all that's going to go. And final note of the episode, let's talk about the Penguin situation. Just be like, oh, Isabel, oh, I'm sure she'll call you soon enough. Ed, don't worry about it. I'm sure she's busy. And it's like, oh no, do you think something happened to Ed? Oh, don't be like that. Oh, wow. Oh no, Isabel, she's dead. Oh no, Ed, I'm so sorry. Come to me. Come to my loving embrace. And he holds him and everything. And you see him so happy. He's like, ah. But that doesn't last for long, because he quickly finds out, Ed's super depressed and everything. It's like, oh, Isabel's gone. Playing music super loud. Like, oh, I miss her so much. She was my world and everything. It's because he wanted her out of the way because he wanted Ed to himself. But now it's like, it worked, but a little too well, because now he's heartbroken and everything. And then he's like, don't worry, Ed, I'll be here for you. You gotta move on. I'm sure Isabel would want you to move on. He's like, her name was Isabella. He's like, right. And it's like, you're so disrespectful. You had the lady killed, and you don't even you have the audacity to not get her name right. It's like, shame on you, Penguin. Shame on you. And then you have Ed. Like the moment Ed was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to the spot she was found." The moment you saw Penguin kind of freak out a little bit, I was like, "Dude, Ed's smart. The moment he get there, he's gonna realize something is not right." And the moment he gets there, he does. He goes, "Wait a minute," because the whole thing is, oh, she must have fallen asleep at the wheel and crashed into the train, like crossed the train, the railroad tracks, ended up getting hit by the train and whatnot. But Ed's like, no, this is like 4 blocks away from her house, her place. Why would she be going to sleep? Which, I've quickly taken it back. I am bummed to find out that Isabella is dead. I was kind of hoping it'd be like, oh, she pops out of nowhere. It's like, oh, actually, I'm fine, Ed. Oh, yeah, I was just away for a little while, but I'm okay now. And then it kind of heats up even more between Ed and Isabella and Penguin. I would have loved to see that competition go more and more. It's like, you try to have me kill, don't worry about it. I'm not going down that easy. I would have loved to see that kind of be more of give him kind of a love rival for Ed's love and attention type of thing. And it would have been kind of cool. I do appreciate love triangles there. When it comes to romance, they're kind of my favorite. I mean, in certain circumstances, because there's some situations like, oh, get rid of the love triangle angle. I just want so and so together. They need to be together, not this other person. They're complicating things. Get them out of the way. So, like, it depends on the situation. But in this circumstance, I think it would have been very interesting. But sadly, Isabella has been taken out of the equation and whatnot. I was also warning, I was like, don't tell me the person doing this autopsy is Lee. And I was like, okay, it's not. Because I was about to say that would be super weird. Because you have Isabella there looking exactly like Kristen. And, I mean, that was just this episode. Maybe she comes across her body later on and ends up going like, whoa, what's up with this? This is weird. But the fact is, Ed ends up figuring out, he hears from a nearby dude who's kind of a witness. He's blind, but he heard her screaming for help. Then checks underneath the car and it's like the brake lines have been cut. How can no one in the GCPD notice this? And he's like, someone had to be paid off. It's like, I know exactly who did this. Goes to Penguin. I know what happened. Butch, he murdered Isabella. Payback from me ratting him out as the leader of the Red Hoods. And then Penguin's like, oh, don't worry. We'll catch that dastardly Butch. Don't worry. We'll get your revenge. So it just proves that things are getting very interesting on that front, because I brought it up last episode, I think. Yeah, last episode, because Barbara showed up and everything. It does make me wonder, does this mean we'll kind of see Barbara next episode? I want to see her and Jim interact, like Jim being the way he is now, like he's no longer kind of like lone wolfing it like he was before. So I'm very interested to see if he has a different interactions with Barbara now. But also you're going to have Ed going after Butch, which will lead him to Barbara and Tabitha. Is her name Tabitha or? Yeah, it is. I don't know. I was kind of spacing for a second there and whatnot. So, and like I said, I brought it up because it got brought up last episode. But Barbara did kind of figure it out. It's like, oh yeah, whether you admit it or not, obviously you still have telling lead. It's like obviously you still have feelings for Jim. You can sit here and lie to yourself and everything and say that you don't, but try to make yourself believe it. But obviously there's something there. Like I said, I'm so interested to see, like, especially after like his whole dream sequence and everything, his kind of his mental journey that he went on when he got sprayed by the Red Queen powder and everything. It makes me wonder how will he interact with Barbara and everything. I mean, because I don't think Ed and them don't know that Butch is hanging out with Tabitha and Barbara, because they don't know that Tabitha's the one that busted him out. So it's going to be interesting, because Ed's pretty smart, so he might kind of figure that out. Or, because Penguin's going to try to get the Butch first so he can plant evidence on him to make it seem like it, just so that he'll, I guess, in a way, Ed will be more indebted to him and everything, and just being like, oh yeah, I captured a man that killed your woman. It's like, but I didn't. Shut your mouth, Butch. You're a killer, and you're going to pay for taking a woman that Ed loves. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting, because eventually the truth will come out. I don't know under what circumstances, but it's going to be interesting when you find out behind that Ed finds out that it was Penguin who committed this murder, because he looks at Penguin as like a very close friend and confidant, because Penguin got him out of Arkham Asylum, even got him into this new job, gave him this new position, and it's like, oh, you gave me this, and it's like essentially you try to take it all away. It's going to be interesting, because you see what Ed is capable of as an ally. It's going to be interesting to see what he does to Penguin when they become enemies, especially because Penguin actually is in love with him, so that's going to complicate things anymore. Just super excited to see where everything goes from next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.